The place hasn't been used in years and has been severely damaged by the elements, vandals, and the passage of time.
What is that? Do you hear that? Somebody's here.
Rick Harrison suddenly became the focus of one of the most shocking investigations in FBI history. When authorities carried out a search of the gold and silver pawn shop, a place that had been synonymous with Harrison's name for over a decade on national television, they weren't just looking for evidence related to suspected tax evasion or money laundering. Instead, they uncovered a horrifying secret hidden beneath the concrete of the basement, a space that wasn't included in the building plans. No surveillance cameras, no exit, an area separated from the world above by only a few stairs, yet it was the boundary between freedom and hell. In the end, the crime was exposed, and the question remained, what kind of sentence will Rick face? In today's video, we will delve into what truly happened beneath the basement of gold and silver pawn shop, the image that Rick Harrison built. Before Rick Harrison's name became associated with one of the most serious criminal cases in America, he was known as the epitome of the American dream, a middle-aged man with a simple style, an ordinary background who built his career from scratch and became a beloved television star with millions of fans. After more than a decade on air, the reality TV show Pawn Stars helped Harrison transition from a humble pawn shop owner in Las Vegas to a national icon. Every week, viewers followed him and his family as they appraised antiques, negotiated over items, and explained the history behind the strange artifacts brought in by customers. Pawn Stars was not just an entertainment show. It changed the public's perception of the pawn industry, a field that had previously been tainted with negative stereotypes. Under Rick Harrison's leadership, Gold and Silver Pawn Shop became a well-known destination, both a tourist landmark and a vibrant filming location for a significant part of early 21st century American pop culture. By 2011, just 2 years after the show aired, the shop was welcoming nearly 4,000 visitors per day, a number that any business in Las Vegas would dream of. Not only did the TV show serve as a launchpad, but Rick Harrison also skillfully built his personal brand across various platforms, from talk shows to speaking engagements, from book releases to real estate investments. The image the public remembered of him was that of a straightforward person with vast knowledge of history, always ready to negotiate fairly, but also very fair. He represented the working-class people who rose from hardship, a model that easily garnered affection and trust. With nearly 600 episodes airing from 2009 to 2021, Pawn Stars helped the Harrison family become familiar faces in millions of American households. Their consistent television appearances allowed them to build a brand that reached beyond Las Vegas, something that few pawn shops worldwide have managed to do. In media surveys between 2014 and 2016, Rick Harrison was frequently ranked among the top 10 most likable TV personalities in the US. However, it was precisely this perfect public image that made the FBI's discovery of a secret prison in his basement hard to believe and shocking. People couldn't imagine that a man who had shared his values about family, history, and business ethics on national television could also be running a criminal operation involving hundreds of children being held captive. The stark contrast between his public persona and the serious accusations led both the media and the public not only to feel angry, but also to feel betrayed. 2. FBI's shocking discovery. The investigation, which led to one of the most shocking discoveries in modern American history, did not begin with screams from the basement or unusual signs from human trafficking victims. It started quietly, like many other economic investigations, simply a financial suspicion. In early 2024, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, received a report from the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, about unusual cash transactions from Gold and Silver Pawn Shop, a business run by Rick Harrison since 1981. Initially, Investigators believed they were dealing with a case of tax evasion or money laundering, something not uncommon in the pawnshop industry, which often involves hard-to-control transactions. The unclear revenue, money flowing through multiple personal accounts and shell companies, along with the shop's connections to certain international organizations, all pointed to a shadowy financial network. However, the FBI could not have anticipated that beneath those numbers lay a far more terrifying truth. An illegal prison holding hundreds of children, functioning as a link in an international human trafficking system. The investigation took an entirely different direction when an anonymous source, a former employee of Gold and Silver Pawn Shop, provided information about a restricted area deep beneath the shop's basement, accessible only to Harrison and a few trusted individuals. Initially, this testimony was met with skepticism. A basement? In the heart of Las Vegas, under a popular tourist spot. But it was precisely this impossibility that led agents to decide to investigate further. In March 2025, the FBI conducted a raid, coordinating with local police and the National Human Trafficking Unit. They posed as auditors to inspect the financial records. When the search warrant was executed, the investigation team began scouring the entire area behind the shop, which was regularly locked and not included in the public maps. Beneath the thick concrete floor, they discovered a passage leading down to the basement, one that was completely absent from the building's permits. What the FBI discovered down there was not only illegal, but also went beyond basic moral standards. Evidence indicated that many children, aged 4 to 17, were being held in terrible conditions, without natural light, lacking food, clean water, and proper medical care. Some children were confined in cramped spaces, showing signs of mistreatment and long-term detention. According to preliminary reports, some had been held there for over 6 months. About 40% of them were foreign children, primarily from Central America, Southeast Asia, and Eastern Europe. The agent's initial reaction was one of confusion and anger. We've been involved in hostage rescues, dismantling underground crime rings, handling illegal activities, but we've never witnessed anything this horrific, shared an unnamed senior investigator. It wasn't just the number of victims that shocked them, but also the sophisticated way it had been hidden. A systematic, organized operation happening annually right under the eyes of thousands of tourists in a famous business broadcast on television. Immediately, Rick Harrison was arrested for questioning. While his lawyer claimed he had no knowledge of any illegal activities happening in the basement of the shop, the evidence collected at the scene suggested otherwise. The accounting records matched the money transactions through the shell companies. A computer in Harrison's office contained encrypted files, which were later decrypted into a human trafficking routing sheet, listing names, ages, item codes, and corresponding routes. Several cash transactions matched the dates when groups of children were either brought in or taken out of the basement. A covert camera system was also discovered, unconnected to the general security network, but part of a surveillance network operating in the basement. Preliminary investigations confirmed that Rick Harrison had access to these video clips via an encrypted app that only worked on his personal devices. According to the FBI, Harrison's involvement was impossible to be unintentional. The investigation report clearly stated, "We found no evidence that Rick Harrison was exploited. We found evidence of Rick Harrison running the operation." The public immediately reacted. News of the child prison under the Pawn Stars basement spread like wildfire. Within 48 hours of the FBI's announcement, social media recorded over 60 million mentions of Rick Harrison's name, along with keywords like human trafficking, child prison, scandal, or FBI raid. From being a beloved television personality, he became a symbol of deceit, moral decay, and media manipulation. What made this case so haunting was not just the scale or nature of the crime, but the fact that it unfolded in an entirely unsuspected context. The basement was located right beneath the retail area, where tourists still lined up daily to take photos, ask for autographs, and tour the shop. "We bought keychains right on the roof of hell," shared one tourist after hearing the news. That phrase perfectly captured the sense of betrayal felt by the public. This case led the FBI to expand their investigation into dozens of other businesses linked to Harrison. Not limited to Las Vegas, branches of this criminal network were found to extend into Texas, Florida, and even countries like Mexico and Romania. Operating under the guise of antique deals, money from illegal activities was laundered through invoices for the sale of vintage watches, guns, and old maps. This system was so sophisticated that it had evaded financial checks for years. The FBI has confirmed that the incident at the pawn shop was merely the tip of the iceberg. From the dark basement beneath Rick Harrison's store, investigators uncovered a global network, one where the victims are children who cannot speak out, and the perpetrators are wealthy businessmen, frequently appearing on television and regarded as successful role models. It is this irony that makes the story not just a scandal, but a wake-up call about the power of wealth, money, and fame, and how they can conceal crimes for years without anyone noticing. Immediately after the FBI discovered the secret basement beneath gold and silver pawn shop and rescued over 300 children held captive, a series of unconfirmed internal leaks began to surface from sources within the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Though these details have yet to be publicly verified, they paint an increasingly clearer picture of how a renowned business like Gold and Silver could have played a key role in an extremely sophisticated international human trafficking operation. Some documents, believed to be from the FBI, describe the operation of this network as a fully integrated supply chain: recruitment, or more precisely, abduction and fraud, cross-border transportation, temporary holding, distribution, consumption, and money laundering. Within this chain, legal businesses like pawn shops are not just places to bypass the law, but could also serve as transfer hubs, where finances for the entire system are processed, legitimized, and laundered. One particular detail that has caught the attention of investigators, according to anonymous sources, is the structure of the basement where the victims were held. The design beneath the store, which was not included in any authorized blueprints, is believed to consist of several small rooms, soundproofed walls, covert surveillance systems, and was not connected to the store's security system. The rooms are divided into clear, functional areas. Some reports mention the presence of a primary healthcare room, coded personal information charts of children, and an area thought to be used for assessing the suitability of each child for different exploitation purposes. According to an internal report, which has not been publicly released, the children discovered had diverse nationalities, possibly from at least 10 countries, including Honduras, Guatemala, Vietnam, and Ukraine. Some documents also indicate that about 60% of them could not speak English, and some are suspected of having made multiple stops before arriving in Las Vegas. Investigators believe this could be a sign of an international human trafficking distribution system, with Las Vegas, due to its central location and high anonymity for tourists, serving as an ideal transit point. Regarding the pawn shop's role in this operation, some analysis records, believed to be from the FBI's financial team, show a suspicious correlation between large cash transactions and the appearance or disappearance of groups of children. Specifically, in the 3 months leading up to the raid, Gold and Silver Pawn Shop recorded nearly $5 million in cash transactions without clear explanations. A significant portion of these transactions was recorded under high-value antiques, Patek Philippe watches, colonial maps, or ancient gold coins, items with a highly flexible price range. Internal documents also suggest that Harrison may have had access to an encrypted data system, where information believed to be a list of human merchandise was stored. Some leaked files describe codes such as V2, 9, female, org, HN, clean, 72H hold, which, when decoded, read as female, from Honduras, health condition stable, detained for 72 hours. This may be an internal coordination system used to manage the flow of people through temporary holding points, such as the basement described above. However, the FBI has yet to confirm any direct connection between Harrison and the creation of these lists. Leaked internal emails, allegedly seized from office servers, also indicate involvement with shell companies overseas. Some IP addresses, international transactions, and company names match records under investigation in money laundering cases in Belize, Panama, and the United Arab Emirates. These companies, according to preliminary analysis, appear to have virtually no real operations, no staff, no offices, but have had cash flows amounting to tens of millions of dollars over the past several years. It is highly likely these were the links that helped legitimize the profits from human trafficking activities. What concerns criminal analysts is that this network may have used Rick Harrison's public persona as a shield. With his friendly, well-known brand that has appeared hundreds of times on national television, every operation inside the shop seemed to go unnoticed for over a decade. An anonymous anti-trafficking agent remarked, "No one would ever suspect a high-profile place like this could be a hub for illegal human trafficking. It was precisely because it was so famous that it remained invisible." According to unpublished documents, the FBI has expanded its investigation to at least 12 businesses that had transactions or indirect dealings with gold and silver pawn shop. Some of these are believed to be antique suppliers, international shipping companies, and even charities that receive donations from Harrison. Although no formal charges have been filed against these entities, the expansion of the investigation suggests that investigators suspect this network has infiltrated far more areas than initially expected. 3. Unexplainable transactions. In addition to the allegations surrounding the secret basement and human trafficking rings, another aspect of the investigation that is drawing significant attention is the financial activities of Rick Harrison and the pawn shop system he operates. Leaked information from the federal investigation, although not widely publicized, is slowly unveiling a much more complex picture than what the public has long assumed about a famous television entrepreneur. Money laundering, unclear antique transactions, and connections to international smuggling networks are terms increasingly appearing in internal reports. According to a source familiar with the FBI's financial investigation team, authorities have discovered dozens of large transactions, ranging from $80,000 to more than $300,000, labeled as rare antique sales, but with no appraisal documents, no international shipping receipts, and no verifiable origins. In many cases, these items seemingly existed only on paper, never displayed, sold, or appraised by any independent third parties. One of the noteworthy transactions involved a 16th century maritime map, valued at $275,000, sold to an individual in Cyprus through an intermediary company in Panama. Upon inspection, investigators found no product images, no export records, and the buyer was unable to prove the item's existence. A similar situation occurred with at least 17 other antiques, including an antique Swiss watch, an Eastern Sun Buddha statue, 18th century European oil paintings, and particularly a revolver said to belong to Napoleon's army, valued at an estimated $500,000. A source from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, DHS, stated that this financial model could be the perfect cover for an international money laundering chain, where antique transactions serve to legitimize money from illicit sources. Facilities like pawn shops are ideal for laundering money, as the value of goods is often determined subjectively, without being closely monitored by banks or tax authorities. In fact, in many U.S. states, transactions under $10,000 do not require reporting, allowing for the splitting of funds to obscure their true nature. Another suspicious aspect is the connection between the antique transactions at gold and silver pawn shop and black market antique markets that Interpol is closely monitoring. A leaked document from the FBI's International Data Analysis Team shows that at least 6 items listed at Rick Harrison's shop match the descriptions of stolen artifacts from museums or archaeological sites in the Middle East and Southeast Asia. Among these, 2 antiques, a stolen Shiva statue from Nepal, and an ancient Sanskrit engraving, have been included on UNESCO's Red List of stolen cultural property. An anonymous FBI investigator stated, "The antiquities black market is a billion-dollar industry annually, largely operating underground. When combined with other criminal activities such as human trafficking or money laundering, it forms a closed system, crimes supporting one another. The involvement of a business like a pawn shop in all 3 areas, legal trading, shady antique sales, and money laundering, makes Rick Harrison's story far beyond a personal scandal." According to a theory proposed by the investigation team, Harrison's financial activities might act as a linking intermediary between various criminal groups. For instance, an Eastern European criminal organization specializing in child abduction could make a transaction through an intermediary system by purchasing antiques in exchange for clean money. Simultaneously, this system could receive stolen antiques from militia groups or grave robbers in the Middle East, resell them in the US, through Harrison's shop, and create a fresh flow of money. This overlap makes tracing the origin of funds nearly impossible, unless the entire supply chain is broken. Additionally, the FBI is examining Harrison's financial relationship with several individuals on the U.S. Treasury Department's high-risk list, connected to transactions with organizations in Lebanon, Syria, and Nigeria. While no direct evidence has emerged, the timing and financial structure between the parties have raised suspicions. What is concerning is that if these leaks are confirmed, this will no longer be just an issue of one individual's mistakes, but a prime example of how a legitimate business system can be exploited, even function as part of a transnational criminal structure. Harrison's direct involvement in appraising, transacting, and planning the distribution of antiques only heightens doubts about his central role in this story. Although Harrison's legal team remains adamant in denying any criminal activity and claims the accusations are part of a coordinated smear campaign, the leaked documents are placing him at the heart of a network with many shady layers. Whether he is an accomplice or simply lacks oversight in a complex system is still under investigation. However, analysts suggest that with millions of dollars circulating through this system over the years, the argument of not knowing seems weak. Overall, if the leaked information is accurate, considering the financial depth and scope of gold and silver pawn shops' operations, it is clear this is not just a simple case of hiding someone in a basement. This is an underground financial system where people are bought and sold like goods, antiques are used to cover up illegal activities, and television personalities are exploited as a trust facade to hide the entire criminal operation. 4. The ecosystem beyond the basement. Ever since news broke about a secret prison hidden beneath the basement of the gold and silver pawn shop, all public attention has been laser-focused on Rick Harrison, the owner and the face of the reality TV empire Pawn Stars. However, recent disclosures from within the FBI suggest the situation may be far more complex than anyone initially imagined. Harrison might be the central figure, but he's not the only one running the show. Behind every concealed basement lies a tightly knit network of manpower, money flow, and protective forces. An internal document, yet to be officially released, but believed to be compiled by the investigative unit Money Flow and Collaborators, listed more than 20 individuals and organizations financially or professionally connected to the gold and silver pawn shop between 2018 and 2024. Among them, at least 5 had previously been investigated in cases related to human trafficking or international-scale money laundering. Some were listed as antique experts, strategic investors, or even subcontracted partners involved in side media agreements tied to the Pawn Stars show. Standing out on this list is David R., who had appeared on the show as an antique appraiser in several episodes. According to leaked financial records, David transferred over $1.3 million to a company in Malta, which was later identified as a financial front for an antiquities smuggling ring connected to Syria. Although David maintains that this was merely a legal investment, the FBI suspects he may have served as a middleman funneling illicit antiquities into the U.S. through Harrison's channel. Aside from these industry-specific partners, even the frontline staff who managed the day-to-day operations of the pawn shop are now under investigation. Several former employees, particularly those who handled the ground floor storage areas, are suspected of having some awareness of the basement's unusual structure, yet none ever reported it. Some quietly quit. Others, according to anonymous testimony, received extra weekly cash payments with no explanation. The question remains, were they intentionally turning a blind eye, or were they swept into a silent machine fueled by coercion, incentives, and psychological manipulation? Additional insider sources claim that certain local officials may have received compensation in exchange for ignoring warning signs at the gold and silver pawn shop. A now retired Las Vegas building inspector approved a renovation blueprint in 2019 that made no mention of any underground construction, despite technical data clearly indicating subterranean activity. The FBI is currently investigating whether this was a professional oversight or a deliberate act of collusion. The inspector has since retired and declined to comment. Moreover, transportation, logistics, and security service providers previously contracted by the shop are now being scrutinized. According to a leaked internal report, one shipping company was tasked with relocating high-value antiquities, making at least 15 trips from Las Vegas to the Mexican border over a 2-year span. However, no customs documentation has been found at the destination points. It is highly likely that these vehicles were used to smuggle people, particularly children, across the border or deeper into U.S. territory. On a broader scale, experts in international crime believe that if Harrison's operation is truly entangled in a global human trafficking network, it would almost certainly be linked to major criminal organizations such as Mexican cartels, Eastern European mafias, or labor exploitation rings in Southeast Asia. While no concrete evidence has yet been presented, the fact that some artifacts discovered in the basement originated from Iraq, Egypt, and Cambodia makes these suspicions harder to ignore. A security analyst at the Brookings Institution, who has tracked numerous transnational criminal networks, commented, "No human trafficking system can survive for long without protection or profit sharing from larger powers. If Rick Harrison is truly involved, he's absolutely not acting alone." Of course, as of now, none of the individuals named above have been officially charged. However, their appearance in leaked documents, along with suspicious financial transactions and their involvement in dubious activities, has given the public ample reason for concern. What's especially troubling is the extent to which the lines between celebrity and underworld have become blurred. The boundary between reality TV and criminal networks has never felt thinner. When a media brand, a public figure, or an entertainment show doubles as a front for criminal activity, we, the viewers, unknowingly become part of that vortex. Expanding the investigation to include supporting figures, experts, employees, officials, and affiliated companies is a necessary step in uncovering the truth behind Rick Harrison's basement. And if these suspicions turn out to be true, this won't merely be a criminal case. It could be the first domino in a chain reaction that topples entire links within America's social, economic, and political systems. 5. Testimonies from the victims. Amid the wave of outrage surrounding the case involving Rick Harrison and the secret basement beneath the gold and silver pawn shop, there remains one undeniable truth that cannot be concealed by legal jargon, financial flows, or the organizational structure of a criminal network. The fate of over 300 children, victims found in circumstances no one could have imagined. Although the case is still under investigation, leaked information from within the FBI and accounts from the medical teams involved in the rescue have gradually painted a heartbreaking humanitarian picture, slow burning, prolonged, and deeply haunting. Leaked medical reports describe the physical and mental condition of the victims as extremely serious. Most of the children were suffering from malnutrition, dehydration, signs of joint damage, and many had clearly been starved for extended periods. Some of the children were as young as 4 years old, almost entirely unable to communicate in any language, and had no idea where they came from. Older children were either completely silent or could only utter a few words, reacting with extreme fear at the sight of people in uniforms. Some aid workers shared that when the FBI broke through the basement door, many children curled up in dark corners, covering their faces or clinging tightly to one another. Some passed out from fear, while others whispered only 2 words, "Don't hit." Such behaviors are in no way consistent with a so-called temporary holding area, as initially claimed by Harrison's legal team. These were clear signs of control, intimidation, and potentially severe abuse. A report from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, stated that among the 320 children rescued, at least 70 showed signs of serious human rights violations. 40 were suffering from respiratory illnesses due to damp, unsanitary living conditions, and nearly 20 needed immediate psychological support due to post-traumatic stress responses. Even more concerning was the fact that about 60 of the children had no biometric records, no identification documents, no birth certificates. No one knew exactly who they were or where they had come from. According to a source from the legal aid team, many of the children had been lured with promises of work or scholarships, even by organizations posing as humanitarian groups. In one case, an 11-year-old girl from Honduras was brought to the U.S. with the promise of vocational training and sending money home to help her mother. But instead of going to school, she was locked in the basement, a place where the only light came from flickering fluorescent bulbs, and time was marked by the sound of locks clicking from the guards. Her situation, like that of hundreds of other children, was no different from victims trapped in modern-day prisons. Many of the children, especially those from foreign countries, cannot yet be repatriated, as their families or nationalities have not been verified. They have been moved to emergency care centers, staffed with doctors, psychologists, and interpreters around the clock. But due to the overwhelming number and diverse situations, the support system is severely strained. One volunteer said, "Each child is a stolen story, and sometimes even they no longer remember who they are." According to the psychologists treating them, what breaks the heart the most is not the physical wounds, but the quiet, persistent fear. Some children refuse to leave their rooms. Some have gone days without eating, fearing the food might be poisoned. Some look at adults with wary eyes, always ready to flee. This panic isn't imagined. It stems from real memories, real experiences, the kind only possible after living too long in a completely controlled environment like that basement. What has shocked the public the most is the revelation that this basement, according to leaked technical documents, was located directly beneath the main retail area, just a few steps away from where tourists posed for photos with Rick Harrison. No words are needed to understand the sense of betrayal that society now feels, not just toward Rick Harrison, but toward the systemic indifference that allowed such a nightmare to exist. 6. When trust is shattered. The moment the first reports about a secret basement beneath Rick Harrison's pawn shop surfaced in the media, America was instantly shaken, much like the aftermath of the Epstein case. This wasn't just another wave of public outrage targeting a celebrity. It quickly evolved into a full-blown crisis of trust. Trust in reality TV, in personal brands, in regulatory systems, and perhaps most painfully, in the sense of safety within modern society. In the days following the initial revelation, social media nearly imploded with discussions surrounding Rick Harrison. Hashtags like Sox Pawn Star Scandal, Not My Pawn Star, and Harrison Cover-Up trended worldwide in less than 24 hours. many people weren't just stunned by the severity of the case, but also by a deep sense of betrayal. One Reddit user shared, "2 years ago, I took a picture with Rick Harrison. My daughter was only 10 then, smiling brightly as she stood on the shop floor. It's horrifying to think that right beneath our feet, there was something so terrifying." On YouTube, hundreds of videos analyzing the case were uploaded daily. From professional podcasts to independent creators, everyone offered various perspectives, from legal and criminal psychology angles to media manipulation and how celebrity culture can create a moral facade that hides darkness. Some former Pawn Stars production staff even spoke out, saying they had long suspected something was off, as there were several no filming zones in the shop that even they weren't allowed to enter. Still, no one could have imagined that behind those locked doors was a place holding hundreds of innocent children. Human rights organizations, especially anti-human trafficking groups, quickly turned the event into a media flashpoint. Campaigns to reform the pawn industry were launched, along with petitions urging the U.S. Congress to pass legislation requiring pawn shops exceeding a certain revenue threshold to undergo annual independent audits and fall under federal oversight. Previously, the pawn industry had largely been regulated at the state level, resulting in limited transparency and weak risk control. At the same time, the reality TV industry was thrown into a reputational crisis. The public began asking difficult questions. Who vetted Rick Harrison before making him the face of the History Channel? If the media helped elevate a suspected organized criminal to stardom for over a decade, who should be held accountable? Producers who once hailed Harrison as the working-class American everyman were now facing accusations of building a fraudulent brand that allowed evil to thrive in the spotlight. Another inevitable consequence was growing public scrutiny toward businesses with similar setups. Places that dealt largely in cash, operated in facilities hard to monitor, or were tied to high-profile individuals with major influence. In the weeks following the scandal's exposure, large-scale pawn shops in states like California, Texas, and Florida underwent surprise inspections. Local police departments reported an uptick in suspicious activity complaints at locations that had previously been overlooked, often because they were too famous or had ties to local authorities. Lawmakers, long indifferent to the semi-regulated pawn industry, were forced to act. A legislative draft titled the Pawn Shop Oversight and Transparency Act, POSTA, was introduced in the House the following month. Its aim, to establish a federal database of all pawn shops nationwide, require regular reporting of transactions, especially those involving items worth over $10,000, and impose mandatory audits. If passed, this would mark the most significant reform in the pawn industry in over 4 decades. Meanwhile, many people also began re-examining how they consume media and view celebrity images. According to psychologists, this reflects a phenomenon known as televised trust, a psychological state in which viewers feel close and familiar with personalities they see regularly on screen, and thus unconsciously believe those individuals couldn't possibly be bad. The case involving Rick Harrison shattered that illusion, forcing people to ask, do we really know anything about the faces we idolize? Beneath all of this lies an even deeper consequence, one few are willing to confront. The children, the victims found in that basement, are now burdened not only with emotional trauma, but also the pressure of having their story go public. Some experts warn that without proper media oversight, these children risk being turned into tools for political, commercial, or media agendas. The first crime was committed by the perpetrator, but if society turns the victims into instruments, that becomes a second crime, one media ethics expert cautioned. From the dark basement beneath Las Vegas, Rick Harrison's story has spread across the globe, forcing the legal system, the media, and society as a whole to face the gaps they once ignored. And perhaps the gravest consequence is not in the upcoming court rulings, but in the silent collapse of trust among those who once believed in a so-called TV hero. Although no formal indictment has been released as of now, and many details are still under investigation, the leaks, the evidence gathered, and the condition of the victims are enough to confirm. This is one of the most severe and shocking criminal cases ever involving a television personality in the United States. Just how many secrets are still being hidden behind the lights of the small screen? Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay updated on this explosive case. Truth has never been this terrifying.